Our next guest was also our first guest when Wise Guys came on the air in May of 2022. Sports columnist for the Deseret News, been covering the Cougars longer than any print journalist in the world. Also a longtime mentor of mine, which I've always appreciated. Pleasure to welcome Dick Harmon back to the Wise Guys after a grueling day of golf. Thank you for coming down from the mountain.
Did you play today?
To join us.
Red Ledges, baby.
Oh, my
How many
goodness.
balls did you lose? Be honest.
I didn't lose any.
Not one?
And Red Ledges, that's a phenomenal course.
Well, it was a scramble.
Well, you can lose a whole lot of
My
balls
team
up
is
there.
comprised of Todd Heaps, former Baltimore
Yeah,
Ravens
great
tight
tight
end.
end. Yep.
Um,
Todd lives up here now,
Windelbeck-
right? Doesn't he live up here? Because he's an Arizona kid, but
Yeah, I think he's still in Mesa, but his son is
okay.
playing for Utah Valley.
okay.
And it was a Utah Valley fundraiser. But Todd Heap and then Wendell Beck, the father of John Beck,
Right.
who knows Todd really, really well, and he's the one that invited me.
And Wendell, people don't know John's dad was a great pole vaulter at BYU and great track athlete.
He's actually the world champion and record holder in his age group.
Yeah, he still is unbelievably fit. Yeah,
Unbelievable.
he looks great.
And then the other player was Giff Nielsen's son, Gifford Nielsen.
Yeah, we know Gifford.
A tremendous player. So it was a fun day of golf. And, you know, I those guys hit it so far. I'm old. I don't hit it very far. So I didn't
but
lose
your
any balls
game,
because I
your
said
game is scrappy around the greens. And you get up and down, and you
made
can
some
putt,
putts.
and you do all of that,
I
right?
made some putts.
Hey, BYU's 5-0, and they're 17th in the top 25. What do you think of that?
I think it's remarkable. I think it's a surprise. It's not where people predicted. I thought that they would win 6 games. That's what I projected. I felt that 4.5, whatever the odds maker said, was really disrespectful of this team.
Yeah. By the way, ESPN, who said 4.7, now says 9.3.
Yeah, they adjusted their computers.
Their
over the
FBI
weekend.
has changed it to 9.3 wins now.
And the chances, they said, of them getting 5 wins was something like 1%.
Yeah.
And they just blew that out of the water.
Yeah.
I think this team, well, it has some flaws. I think they have some things that they have to work out. They've shown something to me that I think is a characteristic that will really be important in weeks to come. And that is in these wins, it seems like what they do is they take the first 2 quarters and they take the soul right out of teams. They punch them so hard that they're stunned and they're reeling, and then they're trying to recover and get back in the game and somehow become more competitive with BYU. So the characteristic of this team is that they are a puncher.
Yeah.
And they've just reached in and grabbed the heart and just rocked the soul of these opponents. Kansas State, they did it at SMU. Had a tremendous home win streak going with a lot of points. And then they did it at Kansas State. Kansas State didn't know what hit them. And then at Baylor, they came out and played those first two quarters extremely well. They gave up some yards, but they just go bam, 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 and all of a sudden 21-0. And Baylor's going, what happened here?
Yeah.
And I think that's the characteristic. They put people on their heels early.
It's interesting. So, but a couple nights before the Kansas State game, and I kind of told, I'm going to use Kalani's exact word. So Kalani lives around the corner, so lots of times he'll just stop on his way in the neighborhood. We'll be out walking and just visit for a bit. And I said, what do you think about this K-State game? And he goes, I don't know what the score is going to be, but let me tell you this. We're going to beat the living crap out of him. So Kalani feels like this is a team that is very physical. When you say, because Kansas State, their reputation is we're going to beat people up.
Yep.
And Kalani was going to that game. I don't know what the score is going to be, but we'll beat the living crap out of them. Like, I'm confident we will be more physical than they are. Have you noticed that this year?
Yes.
And is that different than they've been the last couple
Yes,
years?
it's totally different. And I think a lot of that has to go, you got to credit, I think, Jay Hill, because that's what he wanted, but he didn't have the Indians to do it. Mm-hmm. And then I think you credit L.J. Wood,
TJ Wood.
TJ Wood, for what he's brought in terms of an attitude and pressing the right buttons. I talked to him early in the in the 2-a-days, and he said this. He said, some of my players need confidence. They need to be pat on the back. They need to be lifted up. They don't need to be yelled at. So I'm going to work on them to get their confidence level up so that they'll learn how to play aggressive, believe that they can play aggressive, and then go out and do it. And you can see that that's what they've done. They still have a lot of work to do. They've got to be a better run blocking team. But you can see that all across the board, they're extremely, extremely aggressive.
Yeah, I love that.
Being ranked ahead of Utah at the end of September, is that a big deal?
I think it is. I think it's a big deal for recruiting. I think it's a big deal for focus of the media at this time of the year, which projected BYU to be a doormat and Utah to just waltz in and ballet right through this conference. I think during the pregame game of that game that they had with
Arizona?
the Arizona game, I think people were saying on the radio that they were talking about, and how this is going to be an easy conference, that Utah is so much superior than they are.
Yeah.
And I think that was the feeling. And so this has kind of broke that bubble and reset everything, both in the league but in the state of Utah.
What's crazy is they haven't even played a Big 12 team. I mean, Baylor, that didn't count.
Yeah.
Didn't count.
But it was Arizona. It was a Pac-12 team that beat them up on their field.
And the most physical teams, like Utah, when the schedule came out, I was like, oh. Because it was interesting because Utah's dominated the Pac-12 by just being the most physical team in the league. Stanford had something to say about that a couple of years where they were crazy physical as well, and when they had Christian and those guys. But and then Oregon State kind of got physical the last couple of years and gave them troubles. And Washington was the other physical team. Everybody else, including USC, were finesse teams. And Utah played in that South Division and just played one finesse team after the other, and they beat them up.
Right.
And I thought, wait till they get this league. The bad teams are physical. But now, I think West Virginia's crazy physical and Iowa State's crazy physical. They do have to go play Iowa State.
Yeah.
But they don't play West Virginia. Kansas State is always crazy physical. They don't play Kansas State. But
they got to go over to Colorado.
But there's
That's gonna be
so
interesting.
many physical teams in this league that is kind of physical after physical after physical. And so I never thought they'd come in and waltz through it. I thought Utah would do well, but it's a different league than the Pac-12.
And I think we saw that in the Baylor game, because Baylor is a very physical team and they got a very good defense. And I think what happened to BYU in that game, some of the low lights, is that they got tired in that heat. And, you've been around in Texas. I remember back when the Mountain West first started, they had a golf tournament at the Media Day, and it was in Dallas. And we went and played at a golf course called Bear Creek right outside the airport, the Dallas airport.
I remember this.
And I was playing in 9 holes. And I was in a lot better shape than I am, a lot younger than I am now.
Yeah.
I was completely just worn out. I was sweating.
I would have thrown the towel.
And I was tired. I said, hey, I'm done. I can't play another 9 holes. And so that's the kind of atmosphere they're playing in at Baylor and Waco.
Yeah, and then Baylor had to do it too, but Baylor, they trained in it, and BYU came out with so much passion and were so aggressive. And people were asking me, and I did do a little bit of research on it. So the temperature was in the 90s, and the humidity was probably 90. But the heat index right on the field was 110 degrees.
I believe it.
And think about that through 4 quarters. And it was getting warmer as the day was going on because the game kicked at 11.
And it got hotter as the score got closer.
Yeah, and it got hotter and there was more pressure. And
I think that was a lot to what happened and what you saw, especially in the second half, is that BYU was tired. They were worn out, and that heat had got to them.
And what helped the offense, sometimes it's not even as important that the offense scores as it is that they get some first downs.
Yes.
And so when a team is making a comeback and they've got some momentum, and the quarterback all of a sudden is really accurate and the receivers are making ridiculous catches, right?
Yep.
Give them credit, right?
Yep.
But when that's happening and they have a drive and they score, your offense doesn't necessarily need to go out and match the score. But if they can go out and get 2 or 3 first downs and punt the ball and change the field position and give them a long field, sometimes that's all you need for the defense to go, okay, regroup. Jay Hill did something that we haven't talked about in that game. In the fourth quarter, start the fourth quarter, there was about 3 drives left in the game for each team. He put an entire secondary and a couple linebackers out on the field that were young guys. And you saw he had Tommy Prastis in safety, and they did a pretty good job because they were fresh, but they drove down the field. It took them a while, and then they scored. He specifically did that, saying, I think we're going to have to come up with some stops down the stretch. I have to give these guys in this heat a rest, and even if they score, we're going to hold them down when I put those guys back in. And then he put his first group back in for the last 2 drives, and they shut them down.
3 drives, wasn't it? 3 drives?
3 in a row. And it's those little nuances that people he recognized, you know what, this is putting us at risk, but to win this game, I need to have these guys fresh in the last 3 guys, and they're deep enough to get away with it right now. And that was something that was impressive to me that I didn't even think about until I watched the game again. And so
and the other thing, and that goes along parallel with that, is the Lassiter drops.
Yeah.
Those were passes he never drops. Why did he drop? Why did Parker Kingston drop? Though I think they were hot, tired, and they were fatigued, and they fought through that.
Yep. Here's an interesting, you can't account for the officials, and rarely do I hear Kalani in a post-game show say the officials need to
they blew a couple calls for sure.
Insert themselves into the game. That flop penalty changed the game.
Could have cost them the game
because it was 2nd and 3 when they called that, and now it was 1st and 20, and BYU got really conservative with their back against the end zone, and they ran and punted it, which is the right thing to do. Yep. But if they get a first down there, that's probably game over. And they more than likely get it when they got a 2nd and 3, right? They run the ball well enough to convert. That's probably game over. That was a really bad call that affected the game. And Caleb, he was in the guy's face, and Caleb just like, hey, and like just like pushed him away, and the guy flopped onto the ground.
It was a bad moment.
We called it the James Harden Flop Award of the year, but there were some things that happened in that game. The good thing is somebody had to make a play, and not only did the defense go out there and make a game-saving drive stop, then the offense came out and had the ball for 15 seconds. They had to do it again. Mm-hmm. 3 straight, but back-to-back game-saving drives at the end. As hot as it was and as miserable as it was and as hot as they were offensively, I thought it was really impressive.
It was impressive because last year's team would have lost that game by 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Absolutely.
They never would have got the lead. They would have had a slow start. They just didn't have it, but this team has it.
What do you think about Jake Retzlaff's development over the course of his time? 4 games last year is just kind of getting thrown in there, and now through 5 here.
I think the best way I could put it, he's a flawed whirlwind. He is a guy that has some flaws in what he does and how he does it. Mm-hmm. But the energy and the competitive spirit that he has, he can make enough plays to win ball games, and he can do it in spectacular fashion. I mean, the quick turnarounds that you saw with the scoop and score in that Kansas State game, and then the pass that he threw, that you saw the same thing against Baylor. I mean, as soon as you got the ball and you were ready to go, it's 21-0, and he's doing everything he needs to do. He runs for 32 yards for a touchdown when they gave it to him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a dynamo that's flawed.
And you've watched every quarterback that people think about, and you've watched from before that. I mean, you were covering me when I was coming out of high school. Dick did an article on me when I was in high school, which I've always been grateful for, and he's always been so good to me. So you've been watching for a long, long time. Is what you talk about his flaws? Are those flaws? Can you coach those flaws out of him? Can he get better? Because he has another year.
I think it's hard for this reason, is because certain quarterbacks are the way that they are because you couldn't change Riley Nelson. He admits that he didn't have a strong arm, but there's a lot of other things that he had. You look at John Beck. John Beck could throw the ball a mile.
Through a house, too, by the way.
With velocity. But there's other things that John needed to work on. But he was a better quarterback than a lot of people think. Jim McMahon, we all talk about him. The flaws that he had were that he wanted a 3rd and 25.
He hoped for one.
He hoped for one because he wanted to get the yardage.
Sometimes he liked getting a holding penalty on 1st down on the 20. Yeah. Because now he can go 90 yards for a touchdown. He would say that. Oh, good. Now we'll just go 90.
Yeah. Ty Detmer, I mean, he threw a lot of interceptions. Mm-hmm. His first start, he threw a lot of interceptions. But he did that. But he threw for 123 touchdowns, set an NCAA record. So when you talk about Jake, I think he's working with John Beck, and John Beck is a pilot for a real good quarterback whisperer. There's certain things that he can get Jake not to do in his throwing motion, but when you get him back on the field, I think he reverts back to what he feels comfortable with and normal with, and some of those things go the wayside, as it would for anybody. It takes a long, long time to change some of those things that you see as flaws. But I think one of the things that is the biggest flaw is that he wants to win, and he's so competitive, he wants to make plays that maybe aren't there.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen him learn not to do that.
So he is learning in that area.
He's learning. He's taking some sacks. He's throwing the ball away. I think he's learning, but it's going to take a few
My
more
feeling
days.
is if he'll just take care of the ball, he can be really good.
Absolutely.
Deseret News sports columnist Dick Harmon's on the Wise Guys, presented by Brady Plus and distributed by the Deseret News. We're going to talk basketball here, so we got a lot to get to. But let's give us. We asked Riley this. Want to get your opinion. Your forecast for the rest of the way. You got Arizona, Oak State, Kansas, and Houston at home. UCF, Utah, Arizona State on the road. You're sitting in first place at 2-0 in the Big 12 as we start October.
3-0 on the road this season. Wow.
Well, the good thing is that they've got some of the best teams here. They got Oklahoma State here. They got Arizona here. They got, is it Kansas here?
Kansas is here.
You got Houston
here.
Houston's
struggling.
They're struggling. So I think I think that the next game that they play against Arizona, because what they did against Utah, I think that's going to tell us a lot about what this team is capable of doing for the rest of the season. So if they win that game, I think they win the rest of their games at home. I think they have a great chance at Central Florida because Colorado kind of showed the roadmap how to get them on the road.
Yeah.
They have a tremendous running attack. I mean, they had 3 or 4 guys that are, they're leading the nation, I think, in rushing offense.
Yeah.
That happens to be BYU's strength. I think that it's going to be hard to win at Utah. We know what the tradition there, and then we know, but this is the team that maybe could do that. So I'm thinking that 9 wins is probably more realistic than not. And I said before the season, if they get 9 wins, this is an absolutely blow off the lid kind of a season for Kalani Sitake.
No, absolutely.
There are a lot of issues facing the game, and you've written about them a lot in the Deseret News. Ticket prices are up. The NILs change things. Players are getting paid. But there was that atmosphere against Kansas State a couple of weeks ago where everybody who spent whatever it took to get into that stadium left having had the time of their life, totally bought into the BYU game experience and totally coming back. Those kind of moments trump everything that's wrong with college sports today. And I thought we saw a glimpse of this is the solution. You keep doing this, everyone's going to keep coming, no matter what the linebacker's getting paid. What feeling did you get coming out of that?
No, it was impressive. I think you've got to credit BYU's marketing for what they've done in just the last few years. That fourth quarter type of entertainment.
It's a circus.
But the Rock, I got to say, it's a real force. We saw it against the Arizona State game here at home. Remember when they had like 5 false starts?
Right in a row down in that student section.
Right in a row. We saw that at Kansas State game. That happened at least 2 or 3 times, didn't it?
I think it happened 4 times against K-State. Didn't they have 4 false starts?
Feels like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a force. But the energy that this crowd, I mean, there are people that said that the stadium was shaking, that you could feel the vibration going on, and it was so loud. The coaching staff says one of the loudest things they could do. They could hear it on the earphones. They couldn't hear their plays.
Yeah.
They had to put double pack on.
And people don't realize how big an impact that has. But you're down at Baylor. You're on the road. You jump out to a big lead. Baylor makes some adjustments, and they can kind of come back at home. Put Baylor in the situation at Cougar Stadium,
they never come back.
Well,
no chance, right?
We saw it 2 years ago when they got beat.
We saw it against Kansas State because at the end of that game, you had a guy like Siona Moore. What is he, the 14 running back?
Yeah.
And he's running right through him. Because why? Because the energy level that BYU had put on them, it totally drained them, and they had nothing left.
They were tired.
Right.
They were tired. It was interesting. It just feels like that's what you got to give. If you're going to ask so much from the paying customer, you got to give them what BYU's given them. And it helps the teams winning and all that stuff, of course. But I just thought the Kansas State moment, as you look around, as crazy as the game is, it was still pure and fun. It was late. No one cared. The fireworks went off. It was a good time.
It was college football.
Yeah.
How it should be.
How it should be. As athletics moves forward in the Big 12, and I know you have a keen opinion on these things. What are the 3 key challenges BYU?
If you like what you're watching, you can help us out by subscribing and hitting that notification button.
What are the 3 key challenges BYU has to deal with to keep competitive moving forward across the board?
Number one, and Kalani addressed this today when he said that they don't recruit with NIL. They don't make that the top priority. And I think that's a good balanced way to do things, but NIL is here. There may be a salary cap coming. There needs to have some control over what's happening. But BYU needs to handle, in football, NIL similar, not maybe the same dollar for dollar as basketball, but we've seen what basketball has done now that they've had some NIL money behind them. They're going after the top players in the world, and they're getting them. And so NIL needs to happen. I think, and I've talked to a lot of people. There's a guy who's been an agent in the NBA. He worked for Mark Cuban at the Dallas Cowboys. His name's Jaron Akana. He's an agent. They need to hire him.
Just to deal with this.
The Kalani needs to hire him and says, you let me take this over, and I will approach athletes and recruits, and we'll talk about it. I'll become their agent. And we'll negotiate what needs to be done and how much needs to be done, and then I will go get that money from BYU boosters, and there are some.
Yeah.
There's a particular guy, I won't mention his name, but he's ready to drop down money.
Yeah.
And if things are working in the way that he thinks that it could, that he wants to do it, and this guy could be, you know, the conduit to get that done, that money's going to come, and they can use that, and they can recruit with that, because that's the world that you live in right now. That's one of the first things these recruits are asking. Well, what about the NIL money?
Yeah.
Second, I think you've got to keep guys like Jay Hill, whatever it takes. I mean, you don't have to go crazy, but you better be paying him more than he can get somewhere else as a defensive coordinator, and maybe make it so that his family is so comfortable as a defensive coordinator and assistant head coach that he wants to stay here.
It has to be like Venables was at Clemson for all of those years. Now, finally he went to Oklahoma, which is where he's from. But other than that job, nobody could get him to leave Clemson and Dabo Swinney, because they were paying him like a head coach.
Exactly. And so, you know, and you look back at the model that Lavelle Edwards had when he had coaches that were really good, and they weren't getting paid money, but they worked for Lavelle because they loved him. And I mean, I think Doug Scoville was being paid about $15,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened. But you had coaches there for quite a long time. He didn't stay that long, and some of the others didn't, and Fred Whittingham left. But you need to get these coaches that you believe in, that are good and being productive and are good recruiters and producing and lifting up and teaching the players. You need to get them paid.
Well, and you should
keep them.
And shouldn't you, Dick? Like, because now they get, starting next year, I guess, they get a full share of the Big 12 money.
Yes.
That's so much more than they had. Is there not a responsibility when you are having Big 12 money and there's NIL money coming in and all that, to pay your coaches at least scale or benchmark wages in the league? Like, I'm willing to bet there's not a single coach on Kalani's staff that is at the lowest benchmark in the league right now.
Right. Yeah, so you need to bring that up, and I think that's a good time to do it when you get that full thing. And I think we're talking about support stuff. We've seen a tremendous increase in BYU's strength and conditioning, the output that they're doing now, and how
so
they're
much
doing
healthier this year so far.
Nutrition, the same thing. You see the analysts that you had. You had Gary Anderson here for a while. You've got Chad Kay.
Yeah,
and some others.
Nobody dares say "kaha-aha."
It's easier to say K.
But I grew up with. They grew up in our neighborhood, so his son Walter's a good "kaha-aha."
There you go.
Chad Kaha.
But these guys, it's important. These analysts are so important in what they do in breaking down film and helping and teaching and a lot of stuff during spring and during the two-a-days and then into the weeks between games. They've got to get a good core of those guys and pay them money to be here.
Well, here's the other thing. A lot of the big programs, the NCAA changed the rule this last year, and they said, we're only going to limit how many coaches can go off campus and recruit. You can have as many coaches as you want.
Yep.
So what did the Alabamas and Ohio States, the really good analysts, they just made them position coaches.
Yep.
They made them coaches, and they're paying them, heck, Alabama paid Steve Sarkisian like $700,000 to be an offensive analyst.
Yeah, and so,
but because that's what he's worth.
Yeah, and BYU needs to look at the analysts and get some in here and pay them the money. So that's the second thing.
All right, number 3.
Number 3 is that BYU needs to do a far better job in capturing, recruiting, presenting, and grabbing LDS athletes. The top LDS athletes, some are coming here, but a lot of them are not. And not everybody wants to come to BYU. A lot of LDS kids that are good LDS kids, they don't want to be here and kind of be babysat again. And they don't want to I wouldn't say they want to break the honor code, but they want to have the freedom to live the way they want to.
They've been under their parents' thumb for their whole life, and they're like, honestly, I want to go to USC. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I've talked to kids that have said that. I want to go do something different. I've grown up in the culture, and I get that. I get that. Those are the ones that they get when they come back from their missions.
Yeah. Like I talked to Todd Heap. Todd Heap was a top recruit and he was LDS.
Yeah, I think he was one of the top 2 tight ends in the country coming out.
Yeah, and he told me this today. He says, when I was recruited by BYU, there was kind of an error in the presentation that you need to come here because you're LDS and we're the LDS church to school.
Yeah.
And so that really did not strike a chord with him. In fact, it kind of turned him off. And so they've got to do a better job of caring about the kid because he is who he is, and he's the athlete that he is, and then he can contribute to BYU. And if BYU is getting some of the best basketball players in the country, if not the world, right here, and they're not LDS, some of them never heard of the church.
Right. It's the best place to come play if you're religious at all.
Right.
So if you're a Catholic kid or you're a Muslim kid, can you think of a better place to come play and practice your religion?
Exactly. And so I think that's the third thing, Dave. And along with that is Kalani came into BYU known as a recruiter.
Yeah.
But yet he's lost defensive linemen to Utah and to USC and to Oregon. He's lost them. for whatever reason. So Kalani, I think, personal challenge to him is that he's got to turn that around and get those defensive linemen wanting to come to BYU. I think if they challenge for the Big 12 title, that goes a long way as doing that. I think if he can prove that he puts guys like Warner and Kyle Van Noy doing what they're doing in the NFL, and Taysom Hill, but mainly on those defensive players, he's got to be able to translate that into, hey, you can be here and get into the league, and we can help you to do that because we've got the coaches that can do it.
Yeah, good stuff.
I do love Dick, because there's some guys on this D-line this year, because sometimes it takes somebody to kind of break through, and because they've had backers play, right, in the NFL with Fred and Kyle, but when's the last D lineman you remember being in? But Blake Mangelson can play in the NFL.
Yeah.
And Tyler Batty can play in the NFL. And John Nelson might be so all of a sudden you get some guys, and that helps you leverage the recruiting, because you can say, look at these guys came. They weren't even as highly recruited as you, and we developed them into players. So now if you come, look what these guys are doing. It helps to have players. I think it helps to recruit running backs, and they need to go get some more running backs. But when you have a Jamal Williams followed by a Tyler Algier, they've never had trouble getting quarterbacks because of the history. So it helps to have some guys. If these guys stay healthy, then they all have a chance to play. That would do wonders for recruiting, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now it's been hard the last 10 years for BYU to get interior defensive linemen and defensive ends. I mean, you can't go, hey, look at Chris Hoke. He played here 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, who else can you point to? And a lot of them have come.
That's the issue, right?
A lot of them come because they didn't want to just be gap fillers.
Right.
They want to make plays, and so I think Kyle Whittingham
defense helps.
Yes,
because now they're finally playing a defense that shows these guys, right? Kalani and I were talking, and he was talking about how much Blake Mangelson has developed, and I said, "Does he remind you of anybody?" He goes, "He's Brett Kiesel." Like he says, "I'm not talking about Brett Kiesel tight end here. I'm talking about he's Brett Kiesel with the Steelers." I was like, "Oh wow." He goes, "Yeah, he's that good." I was going, "Wow." He's like, he said, "I'm not saying he's good, but the way he's built, his strength, the way he plays, the intensity he plays with, he keeps progressing. He has a chance to be a really, really good player." And I was like, "Wow, that's saying something."
Well, John Nelson's really surprised me too. You got to give him a lot of credit.
Yes, those two inside guys are playing great right now.
Lance on the live stream says, "Hey, don't forget about Kyrus Tunga holding it down."
That's true. Kyrus is one. We got to point to Kyrus.
You got to point to him.
And you know what? That's a great point. Dick and I forgot about Kyrus.
But he committed to Utah.
Absolutely a guy, right?
He committed to Utah, and then he ended up coming to BYU. But see, those are the kind of guys BYU has to get away from Utah.
Yeah.
Utah's getting them now.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you got to start splitting them up or getting the better share of it if you want to continue playing defense.
Thrilled to have Deseret News columnist Dick Harmon on the Wise Guys, live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wiseguys.com. Let's ask one more question before Blaine hits you up with 5 quick questions. If you could only attend one event, it's the BYU-Utah football game in November or the BYU-Kansas basketball game in February at the Marriott Center, which do you choose?
Ooh, that's a great question. But, I think I'd take basketball.
Really?
I do. I don't know what's going to happen in the BYU-Utah football game. I know it's going to be exciting. They always are, and they go down to the wire. So as an entertainment thing, that's huge. But I think this is the year with BYU's recruiting that it's going to be a real compass pointing thing about where BYU is to take on one of the top teams in the entire country. Here in the Marriott Center, we know what that can be like, and I think that scene is going to be crazy.
It's going to be
It'll be
nuts. Yeah, that'll be fun.
We won't be able to hear each other.
No.
Like face to face, you'll have to scream, or we'll do sign language. That'll be fun.
The fact that BYU beat them at Kansas last year with that team, and the team BYU's coming in with this year, gosh, expectation will be through the roof, and that's what fans live for. They want to expect success when they lay down the money for a ticket and wait in line to get in, and then here comes the team. It's going to be something. So the Kansas basketball game.
I think so, because it's a compass
We'll
builder.
be at both, so it'll be fun. But
It'll be great.
we have funny jobs, but that's cool. All right, you ready?
5 questions, Let's do this. 5 questions presented by Strategy Square, delivering connection, clarity, and confidence in business and marketing strategies. Owned and operated by a BYU alum who's helping the Wise Guys conquer the world. We work closely with all of our stuff with Strategy Square, and they sponsor this element for us. Let's start with this. Your favorite sports movie?
Oh, man, probably Rudy.
I love Rudy, but I cry every time.
Yeah, Field of Dreams was great with Robert Redford.
Yeah.
It was Robert Redford.
No,
that was
he was natural.
That's a natural.
Field of Dreams
With
with
Costner.
Costner, yeah.
Kevin
Both those
Costner.
were classics.
And James Earl Jones, who just recently passed.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so you're
build
going Rudy,
They
huh?
will come.
Yeah. Rudy.
Okay.
All right.
I can do that one.
Okay.
Favorite singer or band?
Elton John.
Oh man, that's classic.
Elton John, because
That's
of the
old
lyrics
school.
of Bernie Taupin. I mean, I started listening to them when right before my mission, and Elton John came out with Tiny Dancer and
Yeah.
and some of those. But the piano player, the creativity that those two meet. I mean, one writes the lyrics, Elton John comes along, and then writes the music to it. I mean, it's a phenomenal thing. And he's been a rock star for so long.
Yeah, it's
Elton
great.
John, yes. Your favorite breakfast cereal?
I would say bran flakes with raisins.
So, well, you know what? Now you're speaking Brenda's language, because she's like, honey, you have got to stop with the sugar-coated cereals, because we promote that here on the show. But I also
Bran flakes with raisins. Did I hear that right?
Yeah,
I
with
just
honey.
want to check.
But do you put sugar on them?
I put honey on it.
Okay.
Dick, you're like
I
going
guess
Mr.
that's a
Healthy guy on me.
That's a natural
It's okay.
substance.
It's okay. You're sounding like Danny Ainge more and more every day. So
You get wiser as you get
Who
older.
eats shredded wheat, not frosted shredded wheat, shredded wheat?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who does that?
I like that.
Yeah, I see. Look at Dick. Dick's a
Danny Ainge.
healthy guy. Okay. Your favorite golf course in the world?
I played some of the best courses in the world. Couple
Yes,
of
you have.
TPC courses, TPC Sawgrass. That's a great question. I've been to some great courses over in Hawaii that I really like because of the scenery at Turtle Bay. I mean, that was fun there.
The links at Kailima?
Yeah, but because I play it so much and I just love it so much because it's Utah, I would say Hobble Creek and Wasatch State Park.
How about Hobble Creek in the fall?
Hobble Creek, I mean, these are public courses.
Yeah.
And you pay $45 or $50 to play them, but the value that you have in those courses are unmatched, I think, anywhere. Now, they're great courses all over, but some of them are just real hard and they're not fun to play.
Yeah.
Carnoustie, is probably
Yeah.
the toughest course in the world. I don't know that I say I'd like that.
It's not that fun.
It's more traditional.
Yeah.
But
That's Hobble Creek. I love that.
Hobble Creek's
Love
tough
that.
to beat.
So, yeah. A quick story on Hobble. My boys and I took them down to play. We were just going to play 9 in the evening, and we walked in, and this was a number of years ago, and Billy Casper was sitting in the cafe, which he did a lot. You know, Billy's one of my favorite people in the world. Played in a bunch of pro-ams and things with him, and I was so excited to see him, so I took the boys and I introduced them. And I said, guys, this is my friend Billy Casper. And Billy, he then proceeded to ask them all questions about what they were doing, like typical Billy Casper, right? And oh, this is great, keep doing that and doing that, and just made them feel great about themselves. And then we went out to the tee, and I said to the boys, how cool is that we're going to play golf and you guys just got to meet Billy Casper? And
Hall of Famer.
they said, who's Billy Casper? I was like, you've got to be kidding me right now.
Just some old guy in there talking
I was
to
like,
us.
guys, and then I told him about his record, that he's one of the greatest golfers in the history of the game.
One of the greatest putters ever.
And maybe the most underrated golfer in the history of the game. Multiple majors. And they're like, Dad, that would have been really cool to know when you introduced him to us, because that would have been even cooler. But then they still think it's cool that they met him. And Billy's passed away, but what an unbelievable. He loved Hobble Creek Golf Course.
He did. I got a chance to play 9 holes with him before he passed away, and what a great gentleman. And,
Oh, I love Billy Casper.
And I kind of blew it. Blaine. Because,
Why?
Because, well, I asked him for some tips, and he was so gracious, and he helped me in that. But then I brought up something that maybe a lot of people don't. He has a son, David, that's kind of gone off the wrong path, and he's in prison.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, how's David doing? And he looked at me, and he just got tears in his eyes. He was heartbroken, and I should never have brought that up because we were having such a good time in that. But I was caring about him, and I just wanted to ask, how's David?
Yeah.
But no, Bobby Casper, his son, I play golf with him. He's helped me with some real estate that I've done, and he's a tremendous guy.
Yeah.
Too, just like his father.
What a great family. Billy's wife is great. For one of the greatest human beings I've ever known.
Absolutely.
And so gracious. But I just thought, isn't that Billy, one of the greatest golfers in the history of the game? And all he wanted to do was pump up my boys and get to know them, which is so Billy Casper.
Legend.
That's my Hobble Creek memory. Okay, last one. Your favorite BYU moment?
Well, it'd have to be the Danny Ainge dash against Notre Dame. That'd have to be that one. I think the John Beck pass to Johnny Harleen would be right
Back
there.
to Harleen.
The long pass to Clay Brown from Jim McMahon that got BYU that tremendous victory in
Miracle Bowl in SMU.
Those are the three that stand in my mind probably the most. And I think I think because of the drama of the moment and the comeback, it would probably be the Hail Mary pass.
To the SMU is the one that tops the three.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest college football games that I've ever seen.
So fun.
Yeah. Some tremendous athletes.
Those are great. You've covered it all.
And I haven't mentioned Jimmer Fredette. I mean, the Mexico game in Las
Vegas.
Or
Ty Detmer, for that matter. Yeah.
I mean,
how about the 33-point outburst in the first half up at Utah by Jimmer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's so many moments with Jimmer.
How about the Miami with Ty Detmer? And after the game, I'm walking on the field with him. He's got blood and he's got stitches on his chin, and he just did it. And walking with him, that was a moment I'll always remember.
We could do a 2-hour show, and we could just talk about favorite moments because Dick's...
We do a 2-hour show.
No, I mean, all we could do is just sit here with Dick and just say, let's just go through poignant and amazing moments, and we could 2 hours just talk about that with Dick.
Oh, good stuff.
Because he's covered it all. He's covered it all.
5 Questions is presented by Strategy Square. You can read Dick Harmon's articles in the Deseret News and at Deseret.com all week long, all year long. And we've read you for all of our lives. Yep. Nice job.
Thanks for having me, guys. You guys are awesome. Your podcast is becoming famous. I've talked to people that have listened to it at 35,000 feet over China.
Over China?
Or Sweden or whatever. I mean, you guys are doing a great program, and I hope people will support it and listen to it and download it. And there's a lot of gems in here. Ronnie Nelson today was tremendous.
Yeah, he's so fun. Riley's so fun.
Thank
he
you.
Really breaks it down. So.
Enjoy the bye week.
Yeah.
I will.
We'll see
play
you.
more golf. This is a great week of weather to play golf.
Hubbard tomorrow at Ogden Air Force Base.
Oh, good.
Nice.
So my buddies.
So you get flyovers while you play. What's better than that?
I know those F-16s or F whatever they are. They take off down at the bottom of that. Oh, my goodness.
It's humbling,
That's
isn't
so good.
it, when they go over.
Yes.
The great Dick Harmon, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dick. I appreciate you being here.
Next week. Thank you for watching The Wise Guys.
If you like what you're watching, you can help us out by subscribing and hitting that notification button.